Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Here, the prospect of a no-deal Brexit seemed to move a step closer today as ministers met to discuss plans. Official preparations were stepped up with the start of dredging on the Kent coast to make extra ferry berths and a public information push next week about the possible consequences of no deal. Here's our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan.
The cold, hard work of preparing for a no-deal Brexit began in Ramsgate Harbour today, a dredger working to make it deep enough for emergency cargo ferries. The Prime Minister arrived back in Downing Street to continue digging around for the kind of EU assurance that would allow her deal to sail through Parliament. And ministers are trying to sound optimistic.
We know that there are strong feelings on every side, and quite right too. It's a really big issue. But I also think that we're seeing a greater consensus now behind the Prime Minister's deal and a recognition that the right way forward is to support the Prime Minister's approach.
Yet after a lunch with the Prime Minister, the DUP haven't shifted.
No, we won't be supporting our deal. We have told her we will not support our deal, but we have said to her, look, here are some things you should be going and talking to the EU about, and if they're prepared to move on these, then that would remove the obstacles which we see, but really the ball is in their court.
In Dublin, the government was warning it may need significant help, mega money, to cope with the fallout from no deal. But the Taoiseach laid the blame for that firmly at Britain's door.
We've been doing our best to assist the United Kingdom in solving the problems that it is creating for the rest of us, and we'll continue to do that. But there is a limitation, and you know, that legal guarantee that we won't see the emergence of a hard border on our island really is the only red line that we've had, and it's not one that can change.
And ministers here know that if nothing changes or clarifies that Irish backstop, then no deal is looking more likely. Are we ready for a no-deal Brexit?
We're working extremely hard to make sure we are.
The Brexit Secretary writing that even as MPs reconvene to debate the deal next week, the government will start a public information campaign telling us all how to prepare for a no-deal Brexit. And that campaign may include advice to holidaymakers who want to go to Europe this year that they might have to renew their passports a little earlier than they were expecting. At the same time as all these preparations, the Prime Minister is still trying to win those reassurances from the EU that would allow her deal to get through Parliament. But as things stand, she doesn't have those assurances. The deal can't get through Parliament, and Brexit will be happening anyway in 85 days' time.
OK, Carl Dinnan, Downing Street, thank you.
Now, Theresa May returned to number 10 today after the Christmas break. In a fortnight's time, Parliament will vote on the withdrawal agreement she has secured with the EU. She'll need to win back at least 100 Conservative MPs, as well as Northern Ireland's DUP, to get it through. Michael Crick is in Westminster. Michael.
Well, John, not much progress for the Prime Minister today. She had a lunch with three leaders of the DUP in number 10. Afterwards, the Deputy Leader, Nigel Dodds, came out and said the withdrawal agreement flies in the face of the government's commitments on Northern Ireland. So she clearly hadn't persuaded them, although Mr Dodds said they will carry on talking. Earlier, the Irish leader, Leo Varadkar, had a 40-minute telephone conversation with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, during which, according to Mr Varadkar, they brainstormed over how to help Mrs May get the withdrawal deal through Parliament. But Mr Varadkar made it clear that it was really Westminster's problem, that they couldn't withdraw the backstop or change it. They could offer clarifications and guarantees, but before doing so, European leaders would need clarifications from Britain as to the kind of thing that would help get the withdrawal agreement through Parliament. In Oxford, the Food and Rural Affairs Secretary Michael Gove gave dire warnings to the farming community at the Oxford Farming Conference as to the consequences of no deal. He said that tariffs on beef and lamb products of up to 40% would be the grim but inescapable fact if there was no deal. Mr Gove there clearly trying to put the frighteners on his Tory parliamentary colleagues ahead of the vote in a fortnight's time.
The combination of significant tariffs when none exist now, friction and checks at the border when none exist now, and requirements to reroute or pay more for transport when current arrangements are frictionless, will all add to costs for producers. We're developing plans to help support the industry in a variety of contingencies. But nobody can be blithe or blasé about the real impact on food producers in this country of leaving without a deal.
Well, listening to Mr Gove today was Minette Batters, a president of the National Farmers Union, and I began by asking her whether she was concerned by the lack of agreement on Brexit and what the continuing uncertainty might mean for farmers.
I think it is a very short period of time, and it is very hard to know, as we stand here today, whether a deal will be agreed, if a deal isn't agreed, what the future holds, and indeed whether we will leave without a deal, which sort of really only looks the live option at the moment. So we've made the case to government throughout. We've asked for clarity throughout. We've maintained and indeed been promised throughout that a free and frictionless relationship on trade with the EU is in both sides' interests, but we've come into 2019 now without knowing what that future relationship will be. So it is all going to the wire, something none of us wanted to happen, but that's the situation as we see it at the moment. I feel successive governments have been fairly out of touch with agriculture. 72% of the country is a farmed environment. We feel it's really important that we can keep producing food. Brexit puts that up for discussion, I guess, and we need a new relationship with government that really works across departments to make sure that we have a thriving, productive agricultural sector that continues to produce food for the nation as well as care for our treasured environment.
A lot of people tuning in will really want to know, is Brexit good for British farming?
Brexit can be really good for British farming, but there are a couple of things that we need to get written down. And one of them, and at the forefront of all of this, and I've continually asked Michael Gove about it, is making sure that we get a black and white policy statement on animal welfare, environmental protection and food safety to make sure that food that comes onto our market in the UK is produced to the same standards. If it's a race to the bottom and we want to import cheap raw ingredients to add value under the Union Jack, Brexit will not be good for British agriculture. So I've made the case, I continue to make the case, and that is what I will stand by.
Will British farming be the same size as it is today, whatever happens in terms of going into Brexit? I mean, assuming that there's a deal, will you be perfectly happy and you'll have the same number of farmers, you'll still have a productive industry, and people will be able to make money out of farming?
Well, the NFU represents 55,000 farming businesses. I want each and every one of those businesses to remain in business. I think that's what the British public loves about this country, the fact that we do have small farms, we have large farms, we have landowners, we have tenants, we have huge variation that shapes the fabulous countryside that we all enjoy. I think, though, we can't expect and shouldn't want life to be the same as the past. This is about opportunity, and most of all, it's about embracing change.
Minette Batters, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.